Director Martin Scorsese recently explained why he believes comic book movies are a danger to our culture. You might know Martin Scorsese from his films The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, and Gangs of New York, among others. And he recently explained to GQ why he believes that comic book movies are a danger to American culture. This is what he said. He said the danger there is what it's doing to our culture, because there are going to be generations now that think movies are only those. That's what movies are. So people that only think that movies are comic book movies, and that's what the only movies that exist are comic book movies. So you should constantly be making comic book movies. He went on and said they already think that, which means that we have to then fight back stronger, and it's got to come from the grassroots level. It's got to come from the filmmakers themselves. And you'll have, the Safdie brothers, and you'll have Chris Nolan, you know what I mean, and hit them from all sides, and don't give up. Let's see what you got. Go out there and do it. Go reinvent. Don't complain about it, but it's true because we've got to save cinema. So I've already seen people kind of taking shots at Scorsese here because he mentions Christopher Nolan, and obviously Nolan directed the Dark Knight trilogy, but that's not really what he's talking about, right? He's talking about these comic book movies that don't really have anything to say. The messaging is either just like they're soulless, they're corporates, they're corporate creations. It's all about the we audience tested it. We did all this like corporate fact checking and all this stuff, for lack of a better term, to figure it out. And this is what we came up with because this is what we think that audiences are going to love and like. And this is going to make us millions and millions of dollars. And we've done all of this stuff, and it should be a surefire hit. And I think that's really what he's criticizing here when he's talking about superhero movies with GQ, because we'll get to this in a little bit, but that's kind of how he explains it in this New York Times article, that no one actually commentating on his new comments with GQ decided to go back and actually look at to see what he's talking about, because he referenced it in the GQ article. But he does go on to describe the types of comic book movies he's specifically criticizing. Like, he does do this to some extent already in the GQ article, which he does with the New York Times, we'll get to. He says, I do think that the manufactured content isn't really cinema. No, I don't want to say it, but what I mean is that it's manufactured content. It's almost like AI making a film, and that doesn't mean that you don't have incredible directors and special effects, people doing beautiful artwork, but what does it mean? What do these films, what will it give you, aside from a kind of consummation of something and then eliminating it from your mind, your whole body, so what is it giving you? And I think this is something that I've been saying for a long time. I think other people kind of in this sphere have been saying for a long time. It's basically that red letter media meme where it's like just consume product and then move on to next product. There's nothing there that you're getting from the film. You're not actually, it's not stimulating your mind in any way. You're not thinking about it after the fact. You're not like really discussing it to any real extent after the fact. It's just all superficial level, and you move on and you don't even remember it, what even happened, because it was just so forgettable. You just paid the ticket price. You went and sat there. The lights beamed into your brain, and then you moved on to the next thing. And I think that is the distinction that Scorsese is making here. If you think I'm totally misinterpreting what he's saying, please feel free to disagree in the comments. But I do think that's what he's saying, because, again, like I said, he goes on and says this too. He says, from there, Scorsese made it clear he believes cinema is the creator saying something with a movie. He says, I'm looking forward to new ways. It's just, I got as far as this. So he's kind of talking about like the technical aspects and like how you shoot the like camera angles and shots and stuff like that. And that's what I do. That's it. And if I could just muster up the energy, God willing, to make a couple more, one more maybe, and that's it. Okay, that's as far as I got. You keep going until you can't. But what I mean is that you got to rip it out of your skull and your guts to find out what do you really feel should be said at this point in life by you. You got to say something with a movie. Otherwise, what's the point of making it? You've got to be saying something. Now, I'm sure people will be like, oh, but you're always criticizing the agenda and everything like that. And yes, because what they're saying is absolutely downright evil. And I don't think Scorsese is saying that. That's not what he's saying here. He wants to kind of elevate you. This is something that Tolkien talks about in his On Fairy Stories. He wants you to achieve kind of this eucatastrophe. That is the pinnacle of a fairy story, and that's what you should be reaching. Now, obviously, not all fairy stories are going to reach that. There are other things that you can get. There's like The Great Escape. He goes through all of these things in his On Fairy Stories essay, but the pinnacle is kind of this eucatastrophe moment, this joy, this elevation of the human, and I think that's kind of what Scorsese is getting at here, not these kind of messaging that you see in a lot of Marvel films now, where it's actually like a very nihilistic, it's bringing you down, it's trying to demoralize you, destroy you, and it's very negative, negative messaging that they're trying to indoctrinate you with. And I think there's a distinction to be made there. Scorsese famously criticized Marvel films back in November 2019 in an opinion piece published in the New York Times. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I said we would get to this. So he actually made the brief comments back in with Empire in October 2019. Missed the end there. Missed the 9 there. He said, "I don't see them. I tried, but that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being." So he's very clear what he means by cinema there. He's like trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being through the storytelling of the cinema, rather than kind of like what I was talking about. You sit there, the lights beam into your head, you laugh a little bit, and then you move on or whatever. You enjoy the thrill of the roller coaster for like a minute, and then you move on. Obviously, a movie takes a little bit longer than that, but it's kind of the same experience, right? You get the brief thrill and then move on. You're not actually kind of going back and like debate, like having a psychological experience or emotional experience with a roller coaster. So I think that it's an interesting comparison he makes there. But he goes on and he says, "For me, for the filmmakers I came to love and respect, for my friends who started making movies around the same time that I did, cinema was about revelation, aesthetic, emotional, and spiritual revelation. It was about characters, the complexity of people, and their contradictory and sometimes paradoxical natures, the way they can hurt one another and love one another and suddenly come face to face with themselves. It was about confronting the unexpected on the screen in the life it dramatized and interpreted, and enlarging the sense of what was possible in the art form." And that was the key for us. It was an art form. There was some debate about that at the time, so we stood up for cinema as an equal to literature or music or dance. And I think the way he's describing cinema here is very clear, because he's having to define what he means by cinema. And again, he's making a distinction between what he views cinema as and what these kind of comic book movies that he's criticizing are. And I'd wonder if he would describe the Phase 1 movies as not cinema, because I actually do think those do indeed convey psychological experiences and emotional experiences, especially that Thor film, the Captain America film, and even the Iron Man film. I do think that they actually do indeed fit into what he is defining here as cinema. I think when you get later on, after Disney kind of took it over, you kind of see the corporatization, this kind of how does he describe it here? The the theme park version of the movie taking over. He then goes on to provide a number of examples of films he believes fits this mold. He contrasted it with Marvel fare. He says, "Many of the elements that define cinema as I know it are there in Marvel pictures. What's not there is revelation, mystery, or genuine emotional danger. Nothing is at risk. The pictures are made to satisfy a specific set of demands, and they are designed as variations on a finite number of themes." Again, I think that Iron Man definitely has all of those things he's talking about there. I think it definitely indeed has the revelation, the mystery, or genuine emotional danger. You definitely get that with Tony Stark's journey. Thor has the same thing, where he's being punished, he's outcast, he has to learn his lesson. Clear, emotional. He gets a revelation on what it means to actually be a man and a leader. Like Captain America has that as well. For duty and all of these other like good qualities and things like that. These Phase 1 movies have all of this. It's when you get later on where you kind of move away from a lot of this stuff. He says they are sequels in name, but they are remakes in spirit, and everything in them is officially sanctioned because it can't really be any other way. That's the nature of modern film franchises. Market research, audience tested, vetted, modified, revetted, and remodified until they're ready for consumption. Yes, consumption, right? Key word there, like consume more products. Thank you. Can I have some more? He then reiterated this point later in the article. He says, "Many films today are perfect products manufactured for immediate consumption. Many of them are well made by teams of talented individuals. All the same, they lack something essential to cinema, the unifying vision of an individual artist, because, of course, the individual artist is the riskiest factor of all." I actually think his New York Times piece is a little bit dated now. I think we see now with a lot of the Disney films is the movies aren't even actually that well made anymore. Especially when it comes to the visual effects and things like that. Obviously, the storytelling aspects have lapsed as well. To this end, he notes there are two different types of movies. The situation, sadly, is that we now have two separate fields. There's worldwide audio-visual entertainment, and there's cinema. They still overlap from time to time, but that's becoming increasingly rare, and I fear that the financial dominance of one is being used to marginalize and even belittle the existence of the other. So again, I think these comments are a little outdated. I think we're seeing the decline of Marvel Studios now. Box office returns are going down, diminishing returns. People are looking for something that is what he's talking about. They want to feel that emotional stimulation, that psychological connection. I feel like that's something that is deeply, deeply missing in our society. And I think it has a lot to do with the propaganda in the movies that we've seen is trying to remove that, like I was talking about. But and they're craving that. They're seeking it out in other forms, and they're trying to find it And I think that there's a huge opportunity here for people that want to actually spread the good news, get into movie making, and really kind of challenge a lot of these corporations because they have kind of ultimately dropped the ball, lost what has made people go to the movies. And I just definitely, I actually agree with a lot of Scorsese's um, critique of superhero films, because it's a lot of the critique that I feel like I've been making about a lot of this stuff. It's soulless, to kind of put a cap on it there. And people aren't looking for soulless things. They want something that has a soul to it, a heart to it. And they really want, and they're gravitating towards those things. And that's why I think you see kind of the rise of a lot of the manga and anime, especially I give something like My Hero Academia. You can look at the old Mobile Suit Gundam stuff. People, the Demon Slayer, people are finding that they're finding soul in those stories, and they're gravitating toward it and towards it, and they're abandoning a lot of these comic book movie storylines, because they have indeed abandoned the idea of what Scorsese is describing as cinema. Let me know what you make of this. Give me a comment in the comments below.
Subscribe for more.